Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you guys are new here, my name is Nicole and it's so nice to meet you. Today I'm going to be doing a July book wrap-up, so if that's what you guys are interested in hearing about, then just keep on watching. So first of all, I just want to say I'm really proud of myself because I read 11 books this month, and that's a lot for me. I usually read a book a week, and if I'm lucky, 2 books a week, but definitely not 11 books. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I participated in a reading rush and a 24-hour readathon hosted by Alexandra Rosalind. So I'm feeling pretty up the wall right now, but currently I'm kind of in a reading slump. I'm reading 2 books kind of at the same time, and they're both okay, decently good books, but nothing that's really encouraging me to reach for them all the time. So anywho, I read a lot of fantastic books this month, and actually the lowest star that I gave was a 3-star book. So the first book that I read was Crazy Rich Asians by Kwan. This is a romance that inspired the popular rom-com with the same name about a Taiwanese American named Rachel Chu, who travels to Singapore with her boyfriend, not realizing that he is one of the richest bachelors in Asia. I rated this book a 4-star because it was incredibly engaging and I loved most of the characters, which is really rare, honestly. My mom and I are from Malaysia, so it was really nice to be able to read a book that had the same slang and kind of cultural things that I grew up learning about. One thing that surprised me was how different the book was from the movie. The key characters were the same and the main plot was the same, but there were a lot of kind of side plots that I thought could genuinely add something to the movie. I have a lot more thoughts about this book, so I'm thinking of doing a series review once I finish the 2nd and 3rd installations of the series. So stay tuned for that. The next book that I read was Snow Falling by Jane Villanueva. For Jane the Virgin fans, this is a romance published by the character, and it's basically about Jane's love story with Michael Cordero and her unexpected pregnancy, except it's set in 1930s, I think, Miami. I gave this book a 3-star because it was great, and it was nice revisiting the world of Jane the Virgin because it's been so long since I've finished the series finale. But it just wasn't amazing and memorable, which was totally okay because I wasn't really expecting it to be. The next book that I read was Dark Witch by Nora Roberts, which is basically the first book in the Cousins O'Dwyer trilogy. This book follows Ayana, who is an American girl who basically leaves her life behind to move to Ireland and find her distant cousins. There's witchcraft and animals and astral projection and romance in this book series, and I enjoyed every second of it. I gave this book 4 stars because it was honestly better than I expected. This is one of Nora Roberts' first books that I ever checked out, and she did not disappoint. I'm definitely wanting to check out one of her other 200 books, so thank you, Nora Roberts. Reading this book definitely made me want to go back and visit Ireland again, and specifically check out the falconry school because I didn't even know that was a thing. Not to mention the horseback riding lesson sounded really fun. Imagine being in an Irish countryside, just kind of on your magical horse. And I don't know, I didn't get a chance to do that when I went to Ireland last year for 3 days because I stayed in Dublin pretty much the whole time. So bucket list ideas, I think yes. The only thing that I had conflicting feelings about was the main character, Ayana. I really liked her and she was really sweet, but I just felt occasionally really annoyed at her. And I just wasn't a huge fan of the romance in the beginning because I just not my type of romance at all. I'm definitely planning on purchasing the next 2 books in the series, and I'm interested to see how the story plays out. The next book that I read is Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. This book is about a free-spirited mother-daughter duo named Mia and Pearl who move into an apartment owned by the picture-perfect Richardson family. I'm not really going to give more away because I didn't really know a lot going into the book, and I think it was honestly better that way. However, I rated this book a 4.5 stars because I really liked how this book demonstrates that basically there isn't always a right or wrong answer. There's a lot of gray lines in this book, and I liked how the writer allowed me to empathize kind of with the different characters. I also liked reading about the Asian representation in this book. It was specifically nice to see how Ed Lim was portrayed in kind of a strong manner, and it kind of defies how Asian men have been portrayed throughout history. Overall, this book brought up a lot of interesting questions, and I'd recommend it to anyone. The next book that I read in July is To Kill a Kingdom by Alexandra Christo. 5-star read, guys. 10 out of 10 would recommend. This is a dark take on The Little Mermaid, which basically is about a siren princess named Lyra who is notorious for killing and capturing a prince's heart every year. When she's forced to kill one of her own, she's banished to become a human, and she's not allowed to come back until she brings the heart of a specific prince from the land of gold. The only twist is he's a siren killer and he's determined to find her and kill her. So this book was everything that I could have wanted and more. There's ice palaces and romance, and the characters experience growth throughout the book, and this is definitely a book that I plan on reading again. I also really liked how the world was pretty complex, but it was portrayed in a way that made it not confusing at all, which is how I felt in previous books. I've had problems kind of following along with the world for the first like 50 to 100 pages, and kind of with this world right away I was just able to understand what was going on. I definitely want to check out more books by Alexandra Christo. The next book that I read was Me Before You by Jojo Meyes. This is a romantic contemporary about a woman named Lou Clark who desperately needs a job and begins working as a live-in care assistant for Will Traynor, who is a paraplegic man who is paralyzed from a motorcycle accident. I am talking so fast, I'm sorry. I watched the movie before reading the book, and I have to say I enjoyed the book much more. I rated this book a 3.5 star because it definitely put me in the feels, made me cry, but I wasn't really happy with the ending. Like, I understood it, but it just wasn't really romantic for me or happy. The next book that I read was Heartstopper by Osman. This is a wholesome graphic novel about two boys who meet each other in class, and I'm sure you can guess friendship and crushes ensues afterwards. This is actually the first graphic novel that I've ever read, and as I've stated in one of my other videos, I don't really know what took me so long. It was engaging, the art was incredible, and I definitely plan on picking the second and third book up as soon as possible because I flew through this book in like an hour. I rated this book 4 stars because it was really heartwarming and happy, and it was definitely what I needed after reading Me Before You. The next book that I read was The Tale of Espero by Dicamillo, and this book is basically about a mouse named Despereaux who doesn't fit in with his family because he loves music and reading. He embarks on an adventure that involves Maggie, a girl who was sold by her father, and Rescuro, a rat that loves light. And this is a wonderful middle grade novel that really tugged at my heartstrings because a lot of characters are kind of rejected in the book for not fitting a social norm, but they end up kind of finding their own peace. I rated this book a 4 star because it was wonderful and a really quick reread for me, and I think that the story will stay with me for a while. The next book that I read in July was The Henna Wars by Adiba Jaigirdar. I'm sorry if I butchered that. This romance contemporary is about Nishat, a Bangladeshi girl in Ireland who is torn between embracing her sexuality and pleasing her parents. She ends up developing feelings for a childhood friend named Flavia who comes back into her life, but tensions kind of rise when they go against each other in a business class held competition for a large amount of money. I rated this book a 4 star read because there were a lot of different topics that were brought up in this book. I loved reading a book that talked about sexuality, cultural appropriation, bullying, and racism. There were a lot of points that I could relate to growing up in a primarily white community, and I empathized with the character a lot in that aspect. Overall, I think that this book should be a required read because I feel like all the themes will continue to be prevalent in today's society for teenagers and adults. Alright guys, so the book that I'm going to tell you guys about is by far the best book that I've read in 2020. So if you guys don't have it on your TBR and you like fantasy, then I don't know what you're doing, go out and buy it right now. So, House of Salt and Sorrows is based on the 12 Dancing Princesses fairy tale about sisters whose shoes are in tatters every night because at midnight they slip out and go dancing at a magical ball with handsome princes. So, this book is about 12 sisters whose father rules the kingdom of Salt. One by one, each sister has been dying tragically. Like, one dies because of a sickness, another one is found having fallen off a ladder, another one is found at the bottom of a cliff, and another one was found drowned in a bathtub. So the middle sister is convinced that the last death, the one where the sister was found at the bottom of the cliff, was not an accident, and she's determined to find the killer before one of her next sisters is killed. So this book incorporates mythology, magic, and a lot of beautiful descriptions. Although this book was very intense and scary at times, there was also a lot of joy and beauty. And I would highly recommend reading this 5-star read to anyone who appreciates darker fantasy, especially one that's inspired by such a classic fairy tale. I promise you, you will not be disappointed, and there were twists and turns leading up even to like the last 20 pages of the book. Yes, go read it. So finally, I'm going to be talking about the last book that I read in the month of July, which is Dark Places by Gillian Flynn. I'm not gonna lie, after reading House of Salt and Sorrows, I had a reading hangover for 3 to 4 days at least. So I picked up this thriller at my boyfriend's family friend cabin when we were in Colorado, and I was reading it by a beautiful lake, and my boyfriend was fishing, and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, this is getting dark really fast. And so just a warning, this book is about Libby Day, who was 7 years old when her mother and 2 sisters were violently murdered with satanic drawings on the wall. She testified against her brother and sent him to prison for life, and she's basically living off donation money but running out of it when this club, who's fascinated with serial killers, contacts her and offers her a sum of money to make an appearance, and they believe that she wrongly sent her brother to jail, and they want to prove his innocence. This book was definitely a lot more darker than any of the thrillers that I've read in the past. I do have to say that there's a trigger warning for graphic violence towards animals and people. So I gave it a 4-star rating because it was really good and the ending really did surprise me. I did not see it coming. But I'm really glad I didn't purchase the book and I was just kind of borrowing it because it was really scary for me, and it was borderline slasher horror, and I don't think that I would ever read it again just because it did kind of leave a anxious, scared feeling with me for days. So if you guys like horror and stuff, I would definitely recommend it, but just kind of keep in mind it is really dark, so prepare yourself. But those are all the books that I read in the month of July. I hope that you guys had a great reading month and found a book that you guys might want to check out from this video. If you guys enjoy watching book-related content, then please do not forget to hit subscribe or like button. It would honestly mean the world to me. Leave a comment down below of the best book that you read this past month, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!